Hello and welcome my friends to The Flying Kick. This is Savino speaking and today I bring you another video in the series Does It Worth the 8? A series where I talk about all the beat-em ups released for the Nintendo Switch by Hamster Corporation, the Arcade Archives. In this video we're gonna talk about Vendetta or Crime Fighters 2, released by Konami in 1991. Does it worth the $8 asked? Let's find out after the intro. Maybe you are not aware, and I wouldn't blame you for that, but Vendetta is the second game in a trilogy, hence the name Crime Fighters 2 in Japan. Even though the first game was released here in the West, Konami decided to change the name and release this one as a standalone game. I have no idea why. The first one was released in 1989, just at the beginning of the beat-em up craze. You can say by the looks of it that it was a pre-Final Fight game. The small sprites, the large scenario, it was more akin to Double Dragon and Renegade than Final Fight. Although it had some interesting mechanics that later laid out the basis for Vendetta and its humor, graphically the game was a little on the simpler side, even for its time. But that didn't stop the success of the game, being issued the third most played arcade machine in 1989 in Japan and granting it another 2 sequels. Vendetta arrived at the arcades in 1991, a busy year for beat-em ups in general and a huge year for Konami. This was the year Konami established itself as a beat-em up powerhouse. In the beginning of 1991, Konami released a little game that you may have heard of called TMNT Turtles in Time, followed a couple months later in March by another small release called The Simpsons. You probably have heard about them. But what made Vendetta to be, in a year so crowded, the top grossing arcade machine in the USA? Well, let's start with the story, but spoiler alert, this was not the reason for such success. You are part of the Cobras. Who are the Cobras and what they do is irrelevant. What you need to know is Cobra good, everyone else bad. In this team you have Blood, a former prizefighter, Boomer, a martial artist, Sledge, a military ex-convict, Hulk, who is clearly not Hulk Hogan, and Katie Cutie, the damsel in distress that was probably in the group just to be kidnapped and give the guys something to do. Oh boy, that's a 90s story right there. And obviously, she was kidnapped by the Dead End gang led by Faust, who wants to take control of the streets of Dead End City. Told ya, it didn't earn any prize for that. But you already knew that. Nobody was expecting a Citizen Kane of the games in a beat-em up. What would draw your attention to this game were its graphics. The characters are huge in the best Final Fight style, but Konami tried to keep a more realistic proportion for the characters instead of huge giants like Mike Hagar. But this is only true for your characters and common foes. The bosses are all gigantic beasts with probably 3 meters tall as it should be in any beat-em up. The backgrounds are very well done, rich in details with graffitis everywhere, broken windows and collapsing buildings. The game really gives you a good idea of what's going on in Dead End City and how gangs running amok can be a powerful destructive force. It is, despite the inherent humor of the series, a bleak world, desperately in need of order. Konami also didn't spare the effort with the animation of all characters in the game. They are fantastic even for today. Every character, playable or not, has a vast array of animations, from the moves they perform to the way they are beaten. You can even see enemies puking their guts out after a good beating. Disgusting? Oh yeah, but also a very cool detail that you don't see in many games. Some enemies will even taunt you by licking their knives in a menacing way. This game is a truly joy to watch. Not so much to listen to, unfortunately. Not that the game had bad sound effects, not at all. But they were too simple when compared to the efforts put in the graphics. The screens of the enemies are basically the same for each and every one, as is the case with the 4 heroes. You will hear time and time again the same screams and grunts come from your speakers. It isn't annoying or anything, but it's clearly that this wasn't a priority for Konami at the time. The bosses all have some lines, but the voices are so muffled that it is almost impossible to understand, especially in the arcades with so much noise income from other machines around you. what really could grab your attention here is the music. The OST is excellent. It has that Konami pedigree with high-pitched notes and heavy drums marking the rhythm. Listen to them is a joy, and they all work very well to infuse adrenaline in your blood while you play, or at least it would. The problem here is, while the soundtrack is amazing, you will barely hear it. The sound effects are so loud and there is so much happening on the screen at any given time that you probably won't notice the music too much, which is honestly a shame. If you want to listen to the soundtrack more closely, there are some channels on YouTube with it. I highly recommend it because those are good tracks that could have used a little more volume in the game. With all that said, what's left for us to talk about is the meat, or the ground meat in this case, of the game, the combat. This is probably, in my opinion, one of the most solid combats in arcades of all time. First, you have a more realistic touch here. You have your punches, kicks and special move that doesn't drain your health. But you won't find a jump button here. Yep, no flying kicks in this game. Which, to be honest, is quite realistic. In real street fights, you don't have time or space to go around handing flying kicks everywhere. In these fights, you often use punches and kicks because they are obviously closed combats. Here is the moment that gives you space to charge and land a flying kick in the face of your opponent. Sure, your special moves are all aerial and in some cases not very realistic, like Sledge's headbutt or Hulk's frog splash. But in its majority, the game kept everything very realistic and with a great variety. Even though all the 4 Cobras have the same basic set of moves, each one plays very much different from the other. Speed, range and strength are the variables in this case, and you have Hulk being the traditional tank of this genre, to Boomer, the fastest but weaker from the bunch. It is hard to convey this idea for someone who has never played the game, but they all have a very distinct feel that you notice as soon as you assume the controls. Controls that you will be using to land a huge selection of punches, kicks, throws and grabs. You can hit enemies on the floor or hit them from the floor when you're down, hold them from behind so your partner can beat them to death, and if they grab you, use your elbows to massage their stomach until you get free. Back kicks are also part of your arsenal and it will be vital to keep you going without too much damage. The array of moves here, and if you consider that this game has only 2 buttons, is astonishing. And I still have to touch the best part of this game, the weapons you will find laying around. This is where the game shines, and I wish other beaten-ups had the same variety and mechanics of this game. Here you have your baseball bats with spikes for extra pain, chains, bricks, knives, bottles, boxes, Molotov cocktails, tires, oil drums, trash bins, buckets, a shotgun and flour bags. I mean, it's a heck of a list for a single game. But what will catch your attention is not only the sheer number of items to practice some good and old violence, but the way they interact with NPCs and the world. Your first interaction with one of these weapons will be an oil drum. You will notice that it not only throws your enemy down, but it will keep rolling and give damage to the enemies as it rolls over their bodies. The baseball bat that, if there's a wall in the background, will launch the poor souls right into it, breaking not only part of the wall or glass, but everything in their way. Konami would later use the same mechanics, but in a more modest way in Batman Returns for the SNES. Chains can be used to whip your fallen foes, Molotov cocktails will keep giving damage while the enemy is over the flames, and the buckets, oh the buckets, can be used to cover your enemy's head, leaving them blind, walking back and forth without attacking you. Yeah, they are kinda stupid, the poor guys. And you have also, as I mentioned, the flour bags, that explode in a cloud of flour when you throw it and leaves your enemies coughing their lungs out, giving you an opportunity to attack. Mostly every weapon in this game have its quirky and unique feel. It makes the game incredibly more fun because it not only offers you a variety of attacks and objects to use, but also the novelty of seeing a new object on the floor and quickly grab it to see what crazy stuff it will do with your enemies. Talking about the enemies, you have all the traditional tropes here, from the typical cannon fodder that will die with a couple of punches, the big fat guy who will charge at you, and of course, the dominatrix. You can say this game basically invented the beaten up bingo. They often come in groups of up to 5 enemies and, despite the low number, they can easily put you in a bad situation. They are fast and precise and will group up on you in a matter of seconds if you don't know how to move fast to avoid their attacks. Most of the time the situation will be unfair for you, but what can you expect of an arcade beaten up? And since we're talking about unfairness, why not to talk about the bosses? There are 5 levels in the game and 6 bosses. For some reason, the second level throws in a mid-level boss that behaves as a regular boss. And they are all very hard to beat. Sure, after some training you will find their patterns and weaknesses, but until then they will grant you some headaches. They are not only very strong, but they also have counters that you can avoid and will often take a reasonable amount of your life. Some bosses can kill you with 3 or 4 hits, and while you always have some street food near them, they aren't enough to save you some coins in your first playthrough. You will die a lot, and that's the bottom line here. The game also went through some censoring when it came to the West. 2 enemies were cut for understandable reasons. One is a guy in BDSM clothing that tries to dry hump and lick your character and the lampposts, don't ask. And the other is a dog that tries to do the same with you, but not with the lampposts. Again, don't ask. I mean, this is not a great loss, trust me. Aside from these happy humping characters, both versions are identical in difficulty and features. With great graphics, a good soundtrack, excellent gameplay, Vendetta is truly one of the greatest beaten up of its time and a solid one for our day and age. You won't find many games around that offers that much variety with so little inputs at your disposal and the absurd amount of weapons with the fun effects that accompany them. Back in 1991, this game was a blast in the arcades, and that was the only legal way to play for decades to come. Today, you can play this gem in some home systems, with options to play both Western and Eastern release, with 2 or 4 players. If you never played Vendetta before, you have no excuse to keep it that way. And, if like me, you played it many years ago, it's time to dust off that red sleeveless jacket, put on some cool shades and prepare yourself for some genuine and tubular 90s action. That's it for the video, guys, hope you enjoyed it, and if you never played Vendetta, turn off this video and go buy it. You won't regret it, and you can come here later and thank me for that. See you guys pretty soon, and remember, keep it up.